All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today on why SaaS platforms need cloud backup solutions. I'd like to welcome your host, CEO of 7th DI, Josh Holloway.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining today. Kind of looking forward to reviewing this one because we got a couple of fun stories, or maybe they're not fun stories. Maybe I should have addressed that one a little bit. Scary stories that kind of tend to lean why this information is so required to be known and what people should be doing. So we're going to be reviewing today SaaS platforms and the needs for a cloud backup and why the idea that your vendor is backing you up is a bad myth to have in your head. So let's get started. So overall for today, the table of contents, what is a cloud backup? What does that mean to you? Why do you need it? And practical steps for a SaaS vendor backup. We're talking to your IT provider or IT department, making sure that you have these in place, and especially if you have them in place for critical information, priority information, or any information that is covered under a compliancy need. So what is a cloud backup and how does it work? So this one's, it's pretty simple, right? So cloud backup is the process of backing up the information that you have stored in a cloud or stored in an environment outside of your own. It's just like your internal backup, except for the data is not stored locally. It's not stored to a hard drive that you take home. Hopefully you're not doing that anymore. Or a backup tape. Hopefully you're not doing that anymore. But what it is it's a secondary backup that takes the information inside of one environment and moves it into another environment. And hopefully it's as secure can be. Right. And then that runs on an interval. So that's happening 1, 3, 5 times a day, maybe hourly, whatever you can sign up for. And then you get to pick and choose the data that's backed up. So it's just like having a backup in your office, except for it's the data in the cloud. And then overall, why is this solution needed? Well, this solution is needed because all of these large cloud service providers with all of their attorneys, all of their insurance companies, they have put it together to where they have properly lined out where responsibility stops and starts with them and starts and stops with you, the user of the system in the solution. Because there's a loss of data, and a loss of data could be hacker threat responsibility, employee responsibility, or hacker attack, or employee deleting information, or where it falls on the cloud provider, hardware goes bad, or something happens to the data at rest. The biggest thing that I hit on and want to hit on again is never assume your data is being backed up by the cloud provider. Assume that they are not, and then ask them for proof. Ask them for proof of their recoverability. Ask for proof of what their disaster recovery plan is, because you may find out that it may not fit your need, or two, there's nothing. And then in the fine print of their service agreement with you, it's on you. Some of the really big players like Microsoft, Google, they have a lot of fine print that says your data is your data, and that's on you to back up. So when we go looking at it, so common causes are illegitimate deletion, and I got stories. Malicious insiders, it's got more stories. Hackers and external actors, malware, human error, mistakes. We all have that moment in time where we accidentally delete something and can't recover it, or programmatic sync errors. That could be some kind of issue syncing between your internal to your external cloud. So one of the ones we could talk about is we recently had a client who handed out their passwords to several of their employees. Their Office 365 platform got hacked. Man, there's so many things that we can tell people not to do. But during that hack, one of the things that they did, because they had the right credentials or passwords, it wasn't seen as a malicious attack. It was seen as just the user logging in from another local state. And they got in, they looked at the email. And what they were doing is they had set up or planted the good old emails saying, hey, I changed my ACH information. Hey, our account got hacked. But they covered their tracks. And this is where a good SaaS backup protects you, because when they started sending out the email messages, they started deleting the messages that were being created or any responses, and they were moving them to separate locations and then deleting them. Our backups that we deployed, they take multiple backups a day. We were able to recover that information. Ultimately, we use that information with law enforcement, or we use that information with the insurance company, and that kind of helps pinpoint and shows where, the malicious threat actor, got in, did what they were doing, and then deleted. Now, the nice thing for this client is no money was lost, no money was accidentally sent anywhere, but still, damage could be done. Brand damage can be done. And then also learning good password policies. That one's super important as well. So keep that in mind. So we're looking at the three common myths, right? Robust backup is included in my cloud platform. Almost never. Doesn't exist. It's super rare, and usually it's an add-on cost. It protects you against ransomware. I really want to hit on this one because I have another story for a client of ours that only does project work. They got ransomware through their Google Suite tenant. Had they kind of fully came on board with us and used our tools, we would have been able to restore Google within about 30 minutes to an hour. They spent a week and a half recovering their data, and even then, some of it wasn't even recoverable. So that kind of shows you where even cloud platforms can be hit with ransomware and those files and those items locked. That's where having these backups help. The nice thing is most of these backups are time-based retention, so we can actually go back past or even further past where the ransomware happened, so that we can hopefully mitigate the malicious code from either activating again. I know our cloud platform looks for ransomware and ransomware software that kicks off, so there's a protection there. So that's another thing to consider, is what is the anti-ransomware capabilities of your cloud backup provider. And then any backup solution will do. They're not all the same. Not any backup solution will do. You really want to look at recovery time. You really want to look at how often they back up, and then how do they protect the data, and then take into account compliancy. So with compliancy, sometimes data has to be kept within the Americas borders. It has to be encrypted at rest, and that information cannot be looked at by employees, especially if you have any government concerns or government contracts where you have like ITAR compliancy, and that's where anybody and everybody who looks at the data has to be a U.S. citizen. So the different things, it just comes with the different compliancies, and each person should be reviewing that with their IT. If you're reviewing this with your IT and they can't hit on those points, or they don't understand those points and they have to go and research that, definitely feel free to reach out, contact us. We're here for exactly that. That's part of what we do. And almost all IT departments and companies should be able to handle that. Recovering the lost data. So depending on where the problem lies, and this will go back to a Microsoft event, and Microsoft will always tell you full recovery is on you. But they also say, well, we have a 30-day window that we may recover. We've tried that. We've tried using their 30-day window, and we've tried getting back data to only have found that a hacker was able to erase that data as well. So that 30-day window doesn't really mean much, especially if a hacker gets in, they ransomware that information, or they log it out. And so to also keep that in the back of your mind, that when Google or Microsoft or Salesforce, anybody says we do have at least 30 days of backups and we can recover, always attack it like worst case scenario. You don't. So what's the best need or best fit and cost fit for me as a business? How do I want to recover, and how fast do I want to recover? And always assume the responsibility. Just like cybersecurity is not necessarily the responsibility of your IT department. The tools are, making sure that they're in place are, but cybersecurity as a whole, really is on management, right? And it's having those conversations and then having management understand their roles and responsibility when it comes to cyber. Same thing with your data, right? So if IT is handling the tools and they're backing up the information, management should be overviewing and double checking that that is occurring. If it's an outside IT provider, they should be able to provide reports that this data is being backed up, how frequent, and then test those backups as well. I know with our services, backups are tested every day, so that we can tell if the data is recoverable to mitigate the amount of time for recovery or the amount of time that you can go back. Like, nobody likes to have that conversation that they're going to have to recreate a week's worth of data. And that's your worst case scenarios. So going back to the SaaS providers and what they cover, right? So they'll typically list out their responsibilities. I have a list here for you. It's hardware, software within their cloud. They control, they build. Natural disaster, obviously, we're understanding that right now with the hurricanes down in Florida. I'm already seeing IT companies reach out to the rest of us, and seeing what we all can do to help them out in their time of need. Power outages and deletion requests. That's it. That's all they cover. That's not, hey, I accidentally deleted something, or an update deleted information, or we had a hacker or a bad employee who decided to go sideways and start deleting information. Any external hackers getting into the systems, and then of course, ransomware and viruses running amok across all the systems. So this is a good list to kind of show you the vendor's responsibility, and then you as the business responsibility, and then IT where they come in, right? So you should be able to ask the questions like, if a human makes a mistake, can I recover? If the software patch messes up my software, can I recover? What can I recover from, and how long will it take to recover from that system? So here's a couple of things that Microsoft and other companies are saying, Salesforce, Google, right? So this puts it into perspective about your data, right? Microsoft's idea is it's your data, you own it, you control it. That means you ultimately have to back it up. Doesn't mean that you get to just automatically blame Microsoft and their Office 365 platform and try and sue them because your account got hacked. There's very set lines on responsibility and where that starts and stops. Salesforce, they offer a backup. It's up to you to choose to use it or not. Ultimately, it's your data. Google, same thing, right? The data belongs to the companies, the schools, or the government agencies. It's theirs, it's yours. We cannot be held liable in the event that there is a loss of information. It's truly on the businesses. And I think we need to break down that barrier where a lot of people are like, oh, I just go to the cloud and everything's great. Well, the cloud does help. It does make it a little bit, easier. It's less hardware for you to buy over time. But really, now here's the dark side of it. What they're looking at, how they consider their responsibilities for the data, and then where your responsibilities lie. So looking over the practical steps, right? So this is where management and IT need to come together and have these conversations, right? Set your expectations. What's my total time to recovery? And what's the total time that I can allot to be down? Other things to consider with the total time that you can be down is like, what's the cost factors for being down per hour, per day, per week? I had a client that if it was the right day of the week, and they were down for 4 hours, it would be a loss of $35 million. And I had to build their disaster recovery plan based around those dollars, those numbers. What was my recovery? My recovery point was 30 minutes or less, right? That's what you have to be talking to IT about. Then you want to fine tune the backup by testing it, running different scenarios, working with IT, making sure that they're testing it. And then once, twice a year, do a couple of red room tests, right? We refer to them as red room, where you're testing the capability to recover, either because you have fictitious ransomware, hardware once again, fictitious, right? All of this is fake, but you play scenarios out so that you can hit those numbers for recovery. And then obviously working with somebody who's always staying up to date on the threatscape, learning about any new patches, any new holes, any issues, making sure that backups hit compliances, and all of that is reportable. And then if you have cyber liability policies, proof that it's reportable, proof that you can recover, all needs to be put into a standard doc. Kind of went through this one a little bit quick, but hey, that's what we like to do. We don't want to waste anybody's time. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we had a question come in, Josh. Can you answer what are the compliance considerations for data backup in SaaS?
Yeah, so compliancy considerations would be, where's my data being stored? How is it being stored? What is my recoverability capabilities? Like that's your intervals, right? How often the data is being backed up. You will have different concerns with different compliances. Obviously, NIST, CMMC for military and gov versus like HIPAA, right? So HIPAA is going to be all your medical information. And then with safe harbor laws that were released on June 9th of this year, how is that data being protected and being backed up? So for your financial firms or people who may hold financial information, you are actually being required to operate within safe harbor, which means that you are doing your utmost, and there's a couple of rules and regulations to it, to protect the data of that person, especially their financial or their personal identifying information. So those all have to be taken into consideration. If you're holding financial information for your clients and nobody's talked to you about safe harbor, or this is the first time you're hearing about it, definitely bring it up to your IT person, have a conversation with them, and see, one, do they understand it? Two, are they protecting you? And three, how vulnerable or open are you currently not following the rules and guidelines to safe harbor? For safe harbor, you can do a couple of quick searches online and pull up some information on that if you want to further educate yourself. So those are your overall considerations. Any other
Awesome.
questions we
Yeah.
have out there?
Yeah, it looks like we had one more come in. Do you have any recommended strategies for educating our employees on data security?
Yeah, so on that one, it's doing constant, and I hate maybe the word constant is not the right word, but ongoing training and ongoing cyber training. So one of the things we offer is ongoing training and cyber training that talks about those exact points. They're 5 minutes or less in total. You're talking a 2-minute video, a questionnaire of 5 questions. But we use that here inside of Seventh DI Technologies. I've had a couple of employees who are non-technical staff talk about what they've learned, and they actually learned something from the videos and have applied it. So those are definitely something that you should be talking to your vendor about, or maybe your IT department. If your IT department doesn't have access to something like that, look for a co-managed situation where you're working with maybe another MSP that just, they have an arm for cybersecurity and they can provide that to you. All right. Any other questions out there, Taylor?
It looks like that's all that has come in, unless anyone wants to add some last minute question in there.
Yeah, throw in a comment or concern here. We're looking at the chats, we're looking at the Q&A areas of the webinar. So yeah, feel free to put that up, and we'll keep this open for a couple more minutes. All right. Looks like we're not going to get any more questions. So about 50 more seconds and we'll go ahead and round this out. Definitely want to thank everybody for attending today. Sharing this information is always fun for me, plus getting the education out there. So I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you attending.